Hello, I'm JJ from Paranormal Talks, paranormaltalks.com. I'm here to deliver to you 6 predictive videos. That is, videos that contain predictive content that I have gathered into one package of 6. These predictive videos that contain this content, they have been delivered to us over the decades, but they're all scattered around. So I thought it would be a good idea to put them all together so you can see the consistency of the information contained in these predictions that impact us economically and politically. We usually get our news, our predictions from the nightly news, and it's rather a small place to find that information, whereas these predictive videos contain information that spans decades. And the people I have chosen and the methods that these people use to make these predictions, I chose them in particular because of their track record of accuracy in making these predictions. And that's why they span decades, because that's how they have a good track record. They predicted it 20, 30 years ago, and it has come true long ago. So with these 6 videos, the first 2 will probably be the longest because they lay the baseline for you, the main themes, the main threads that will run through the other predictive videos from different time periods. Now, let me warn you, these predictions in these videos may not agree with your current beliefs or your current philosophies or your current ideas about our economy and about our politics. So if that's the case, and if you don't want to be upset, please turn off this video now. Okay, thank you. Now, those of you who have remained, you don't mind being upset. You don't mind having your ideas challenged. You don't have a problem having new additional information added to what you already believe and maybe making adjustments to your beliefs and ideas. And that's A-okay, because with these predictions, that's what really hurts us, is not really understanding what's coming up for us in our country, the United States of America. And if we don't know what's coming up, we're not prepared, mostly psychologically or emotionally. And that's what really hurts us. Physically, we can get prepared for that fairly easily. But psychologically and emotionally, if we're really resisting that, we really don't have much of a chance. So it really starts right up here, and also in our heart and in our emotions. And this is actually a rather well-established psychological fact that if you can't accept these big, massive changes that are coming up for us in America, since that's what these 6 videos are about, then the chances of you coming through it successfully are not as good as they could be for you and your children. So I put these together as an educational service of Paranormal Talks. So these 6 videos begin with the first bunch of predictions that have been predicted for decades by astrologers. And so this is the first one, astrology. Astrology is quite an ancient science, and it has a great, accurate track record. And in delivering this predictive talk about astrology and what's coming up for us economically and politically in the United States in particular, and some other countries to a minor degree, is I'll give you some background on astrology as far as the history. Also, astrology, how it applies to you in particular, just a little snippet so you have a baseline of yourself. Also, how astrology applies to nations that is other countries, because not only does it apply to you personally, it also applies to cities, to states, and to nations. And then a little bit about the science of astrology and the elements that make it up. I mean, astrology is quite an ancient science, and it's not something you just pull out of your butt. Astrology is probably the most complex technical divination tool we have at our fingertips, and because of its accuracy, it's a good idea to have it in your back pocket. And then the last thing we'll talk about is the planets in the sky, the planets that move around in the sky, the planets that transit in the sky. Much as you take mass transit in the morning to go to the office, and then you take mass transit to come home at night, you are transiting. You are transiting, just like the planets in the sky are transiting, moving from one place to another, as the moon does, as the sun does, as Venus does, Mars, Pluto, all of those planets, they transit, just like we do. So that's the basis. Let's get started with astrology. Now, the background of astrology, our Western country, the United States, is probably the only country, United States and Canada in particular, that have shunned and rejected and made fun of this divination tool, astrology. The other countries in the world do not. So we are really the oddballs not using this. In Europe, in China, in Asia, throughout the world, every king, every emperor, every czar had their court astrologer. At least one, maybe several. Because we understood as humans that the planets impact us, and you can count on the timing and the triggering of the planetary transits, not only to us personally, but to our nation. And that's why the kings, the czars, the emperors wanted to know where and what the transiting planets were doing in relationship to their country, because they had to rule their country successfully, and they wanted to stay in power as long as possible. And an astrologer would guarantee that for them. And of course, if the astrologer didn't do a good job, they got killed. So you can see how accurate astrology is, because there weren't that many astrologers who were killed. They did quite a good job. And at one time, in Europe anyway, there was an astrologer on every other street corner that the common man could consult about their own personal life. Much as today we have a liquor store on every other street corner, which maybe has taken the place of a good solid consultation by an astrologer. We now have liquor stores on the corners instead. And boy, we sure go to those a lot sometimes, don't we? And then next is astrology, how it applies to you. Now, astrology has cycles. And I'm mentioning each one of these things because in these following 6 predictive videos, cycles will be mentioned. That is a major thread that will run through these videos, with some of them more than others. But these cycles apply to us. There are 7-year cycles that impact us, 29-year cycles that impact us, 42-year cycles that impact us, 12-year cycles that impact us, 58-year cycles that impact us, and 84-year cycles that impact us. There's another cycle that a lot of us are not around to actually feel the impact of, and that's a 250-year cycle that impacts us. In regards to the 29-year cycle that impacts us, that hits all of us. Just remember, think what was going on in your life when you were about 29 years old. 28, 29, 30. What was going on in your life? Probably something rather significant that you remember. But that's just a little sampling. So the planets have those impacts on us personally, and they also have them on our nation. Our nation's economy, politics, even weather. Now the astrological science and the elements that make it up. You know, I said it was technical. So let me show you just some of the basic elements of astrology. And then I wanted you to tell me that it's just a bunch of cuckoo. With all of us, a nation as well as us individually, we have a birth chart. And here's a sample of a birth chart. You see? It's a circle, and this is called Western astrology. This is not the Eastern style astrology used by Indians and Chinese, which is equally as accurate. This is the Western style of astrology. You see, it's a circle, and the circle, a circle is 360 degrees, yes? And then these 360 degrees are divided up into 12 pieces of pie. And each piece of pie is 30 degrees. So 12 pieces of pie times 30 equals 360 degrees. So that's the first part of astrology. And that's what you need as a basis. And then once you have that astrology chart, then you put the planets in the places that they belong. There are 10 planets you have to look at. And these are the symbols of the planets and the words of who and what they are there. Next, you have the astrological signs. You know, the ones in the sky that the astronomers look at? Here are the 12 signs, the 12 constellations, which are called signs. The 12 constellation signs. Those also have to be put in that circle, that astrology sign. And then once you have those 12 pieces of pie and the planets and the signs, the constellations, then you put together how they relate to one another. And that's called an aspect. How one planet relates to another. It's like, how do you relate to your husband? Or how does your child relate to their friend? How you relate is called an aspect. How do you aspect your husband? How does your son aspect his teammates? Those are called aspects. Well, these are astrological aspects. These are also used with the planets. Basic ones. And for this astrology talk, to get back to the predictions now that I've given you a little sampling of astrology in the very high level pieces of astrology, we're going to be talking about the planets that are impacting us right now, the ones you might want to be aware of. And these are called the big planets. I mean, they may not be physically big, but these are planets that impact the masses. That means everyone in a nation. And you can see the symbol of the planet and the name of the planet underneath. Now, if you want a more detailed explanation of astrology, planets, aspects, all of those things, and how they impact us, how this information is found in our most sacred texts, including the Bible, which we don't understand. Because we don't know the language of astrology, we don't even know what we're reading when we read it in, like, the Bible. And I know people will get up in arms about that, but I don't care. Okay, so Jordan Maxwell, he has a lot of educational videos on YouTube. He's quite expert at this information. Astrology, how it runs through Judaism, Christianity, and many, many other religions. And if we don't like hearing that, that proves that brainwashing works. That we're not supposed to know this stuff. We're not supposed to use this stuff. And what better way than to program us to reject it and hate it? Yes, sirree. Okay, let me give you some backgrounds on astrology and what has happened. Remember in 1929 and 1930? Well, this was when transiting Uranus was squared Pluto. And again, the word transiting means you take the mass transit to work in the morning, you take the mass transit at night, you are transiting. Well, you're moving from one place to another. Well, the moving Uranus was aspecting Pluto, which was very bad, because we have well-known history of what happened when these two planets were not getting along very well. That's what that square means, the aspect of a square. They weren't getting along so well, and our economy went into the dumper, and it was quite stressful for us. I'm laying out the accuracy and the triggers of astrology and how it impacts us. Okay? That was one. You can't deny that. That's a fact. Next one. In the mid-1960s, 1964 to be exact, transiting Uranus was conjunct Pluto. You see how there's a consistency here? Again, we have the planet Uranus and Pluto. These two planets, when they were transiting, they were conjunct. A conjunction means they were together in the sky. They were side by side. And they were probably punching each other, because this was quite a disturbing time for our nation in the 60s. Riots, killings of our elected leaders. It was quite tumultuous. Okay. Another one. In December, late December, I think it was December 27th, something like that to be exact, December of 2008, the planet Pluto enters the constellation sign Capricorn for the first time since 1776. Do you remember what happened in 1776 in America? Well, that gives you a clue as to what's coming up for us. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about these planets also. So that's Pluto enters the sign Capricorn for the first time since 1776. Pluto has a transit cycle of 250 years. It takes Pluto 250 years to start from one place and end up and come back to the place it started 250 years ago. So the planet Pluto was in the constellation sign Capricorn in 1776, and 250 years later, Pluto comes all the way back and it enters the constellation sign Capricorn again. 250 years. And then what's coming up for us is January 12th, to be precise, in 2020, Saturn conjuncts Pluto. So Saturn and Pluto will be together in the sky. Now, the last time Pluto and Saturn were together in the sky was 1861. Remember 1861? You know, 1861 to 1863 in our country? What happened? The first American Civil War. It's back, and it will hit January of 2020. And that's why I said, if you don't want to be upset, and you like everything nice, warm, and fuzzy, you can turn off the video now. But this is to tell you what's coming up for us, the accuracy. And then finally, in February 22nd, 2022, this country of America has what is called a Pluto return. A Pluto return means Pluto started in the sign Capricorn. It doesn't say that, but it started in one particular place in 1776 and it will take 250 years to come back to where it started when this country was born. And it will come back to where it started in February of 2022. Now let me tell you a bit about what these planets are about. the planet Pluto. That's the planet of birth, transformation, and death. And then birth, transformation, death. The planet Saturn, that's the planet that rules monolithic types of structures, such as governments, large institutions, the status quo. That's Saturn. It's the taskmaster. It's the one who insists that we learn the lesson before we move on and move up to more responsibility. You can't get away from Saturn, and you can't get away from Pluto. The planet Uranus that I showed, that planet is the planet of awakening. Radical awakening usually. I mean, we experience it as radical. I mean, when you're awakened from a nice sound sleep, or where you're having a lovely dream and you're woken up, you may not be very happy about that at all. You may be rather upset. Well, that's how it is sometimes with Uranus when it awakens us to a reality that we have not seen, or maybe we did not want to see. And it's just thrust upon us. It's usually pretty sudden, and it can be quite uncomfortable. But Uranus is the planet of awakenings. Where is that? Here we go. So this is Pluto. This is Uranus. And this is Saturn. That's the symbol of those guys. And those are the ones that are really impacting and hitting America economically and politically right now. It's those two planets, mostly Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. Those three planets, those are the ones that are impacting us right now. And they have us so upset and angry and flummoxed. Because that's what those planets do. But the astrologers knew this was coming. These planets happen. They trigger things. Like I showed you with the with the visual aid of the 1930s and the mid 1960s and the year 2008 with the financial meltdown. The astrologers, we knew this was coming, because those planets have a track record of doing these things before in our history and other countries' history. But right now, we just want to look at America. So let me tell you about what's coming up for us in January of 2022. That's probably the most significant. That's when Pluto returns to the place it started, when this country was born in 1776. So Pluto, now it plays a really critical role on the masses, on human development and our progress, because its purpose, nothing can hide from Pluto. Any nastiness or nefarious activity cannot hide, you cannot get away, and Pluto uncovers that. And that's also upsetting, because we have our the people we honor, we have our heroes who we think and believe are just wonderful, and they can never do any wrong. But Pluto comes along and it lifts the cover, lifts up the rug, turns over the rock, and you see, ooh, this is not so nice under this rock or under this rug or what was hidden. But Pluto is to help us develop and to realize the truth. It exposes the faulty functioning of our society. It exposes the faulty structures of our society, which need to be destroyed, that is, transformed, which can be very uncomfortable, and rebuilt in order, destroyed, which is transformed, and rebuilt, which is rebirthed, reborn, in order to operate smoothly, more equitably across all of us, all of the people, since it does impact the masses. So, so just be prepared, psychologically, emotionally. It's really powerful, and nothing escapes this. Nothing can stop it. Voting can't stop it. Assassinating can't stop it. It will move forward, and it will be what it is. It will be transformed through a death of types, and it will be rebirthed. It's the transformation part that's really uncomfortable, because there is actual physical death with that. But it will steer us to a wiser place. So we adjust our course to a more humane course for the masses. Now, Pluto, that planet, its dominion, has to do with power, corruption, destruction, regeneration. And usually when a country has a Pluto return, which is happening to the United States in February of 2022, there is a collapse, a major transformation of the government. So my guess is, my speculation is, what we are feeling and experiencing and hearing and seeing today, or for these last several years, probably starting in about, actually starting in 2008, and it's just gotten worse since then. What we're seeing and feeling, this is what it looks like as a government, as a country is imploding, is transforming. It's not very comfortable, is it? It's like a snake shedding its skin. I don't know what that's exactly like, but it doesn't look very comfortable. And it's a slow, relentless process. And then Pluto presides over the exposure of the dark underbelly of society, the dark underbelly of a culture, the dark underbelly of politics and economics. Pluto exposes this darkness, and it's exposed so that it can be eradicated. So basically what I'm saying is there's no going back to the way it used to be as far as politics and economics in this country. That's what astrology says. That's what astrologers say. It's relentless, and there's no stopping it, and it is a cycle. Now, the next thing that's going to hit us even before that is it happens in the year 2020. And I showed that one. To be precise, January 12th, it exactly will be triggered. January 12th, 2020. That's when the planet Saturn and Pluto are in the sky together. And the last time those two planets were in the sky together for this country was 1861. Actually, a few years before that. But you remember what happened in 1861 in this country. That was the first American Civil War. So be psychologically prepared for this. Now, these exact dates I've given you, that's the trigger. It doesn't mean it actually happens full-blown and there you go, like a rocket taking off. That's the trigger. It's like a little bit of a landslide, a little bit of a avalanche. You know, you see the first trickles of it, and we're already feeling the trickles of it, and we're getting nervous because we're standing at the bottom of the mountain, and our boots are starting to get covered with snow as it's all been trickling down, trickling down. We're probably up to about our knees in snow now that has been trickling down as a precursor to the full-blown avalanche right now. So that's when it's actually triggered. and then the avalanche will finally come. So those are just a little bit of heads up. Heads up, you guys. So I wanted to give you these exact dates and these particular occurrences because the following 5 videos will also have some of these major threads from these other people who use other methods, because there's more than one way to skin a cat, even though I love cats. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and the consistency of these predictions can be very, very, very helpful for you in being successful in these very turbulent times that we move into the future. So hold on, and we'll give you the content for the prediction number 2 coming up. This is JJ, Paranormal Talks, signing out. See ya.